Okay, who's got some good news they want to share, or who has some thoughts from the Life by Design forum that they have either questions on or want some clarity on? I know I kind of skimmed through it yesterday, and I'll spend an extra moment on it today. I'm still finalizing. I've got one, what do they call it? Circular formula that I can't seem to figure out. So if anyone knows what they're doing on Excel, I'm like at 8 out of a 10, and I need help with one more formula. So pop in today if you know what you're doing, and see if you can help me out. And then the Life by Design formula or page will be complete. Any thoughts on what we learned yesterday, or anyone want to share any successes?
I'll share, Bill.
All right.
I actually submitted an offer for my buyer yesterday, so I'm waiting to hear back for that.
Awesome.
And I was checking my email, and I received the approval from a client that I was working with 2 weeks ago that applied for Home Partners of America. So it seems
That's
like I'll be
awesome.
doing my first deal with Home Partners, so I'm excited about that.
All right, beautiful. Good work. Good work. Make sure you know, I don't have to tell you this, but I'll say it just so everyone can hear real clearly. Remember, Home Partners is an organization. I don't know their kind of offering package intimately, but I do know that we've had an agent in the past that built up a pretty nice relationship with Home Partners and started to get some leads from Home Partners, actually, where the person would approach Home Partners first, and maybe they qualified or didn't qualify, or if they didn't qualify, they'd send them to a real estate agent, or if they did qualify and they didn't have a real estate agent, then they'd pass it off to a real estate agent. So remember that every time that you are speaking to somebody, this is an opportunity for you to forge a relationship that can be helpful to everyone involved, you know, for the foreseeable future. Congratulations. Okay, anyone else? Anyone else? All right. I want to jump, actually, let me just spend one quick second going real fast over this Life by Design page one more time. So what we did yesterday, and just to make sure that everyone kind of fully understands the concept, is we're trying to make sure that the number that we build the plan for, right, either the income or the number of sales you want to have, matches a number that is relevant, not only relevant to you, but that gets you really excited, right? So if, let's say, you're used to making, let's say, $80,000 a year, but you've always wanted to go on this cruise, and you've always wanted to buy this car, you've always wanted to make this investment. Let's not make a plan for 80, let's make a plan for more than 80, right? And just because you have big goals does not mean that you have to, you know, spend less time away from your family, or, you know, not have dinner with your family, or not do your hobbies or see your friends or any of that stuff. It's all about creating a life by design. That's really the point of this. So what we do is we take the profit allocations, right, the desired profit, and essentially identify what we want to spend that profit on. We do the same thing for your personal expenses, your business expenses, and your business cost of sale. And what we do is we try to identify, based on your average sales price, how many units you need to sell. How many units you need to sell, of course, when we put that into the economic model, we'll identify the number of appointments that you need. And then the rest is, you know, figuring out the strategies that you're going to employ to get those appointments. One of the things that Gene Rivers spoke about last week is it's better oftentimes to especially as you're growing, not to focus too much on the GCI, but to focus more on the units, because the units is really more about like the bandwidth or the man hours that are needed to close those amount of units. So you'll see later on, we're going to take this into the calendaring system as well. Make sense? All right. So buyers and sellers checklist. Here's what I have gone in and kind of edited for, you know, to kind of take it from 5 or 6 years ago to now. And I've also done a couple of things here which help you kind of gauge what responsibilities are perhaps the agents and what responsibilities are perhaps the agents until they can find somebody else to do it, right? Contract to close or VA or assistant or something like that. So I was also shared it with a couple people, and they've given me some advice to break it down into kind of stages of the sale, right? So I broke it down into pre-contract, contract to close, and post-contract, or post-closing, I should say. Okay. Again, when I send this out to everyone, I want you to make a copy of it, and then you can do whatever you want with it, right? So if you want to delete steps or add steps or change around the coloring or change around the order or whatever, it's totally up to you. When I send it out, make a copy of it, and then you can make it your own. But this is kind of where we started. So I'll start with buyers. And oftentimes an agent will say, well, I got a buyer, now what? Right? Or I met a buyer, now what do I do? Or, hey, I got a contract pending, what are my next steps? So I'm going to walk you through a pretty thorough list of what should be done. Now, what I want you to be thinking about when you listen to this list is, number one, if there's a step you don't understand or you don't have the right script or resource for it, make a note of it, because until you get intentional about figuring it out, you're still not going to know, right? And if you don't have these systems in place, then this is also a good opportunity for you to say, hey, let's build a list of tasks that I need to accomplish so that I can keep everything organized and all the deadlines are met and nothing slips through the cracks, okay? So I'll kind of scan through it pretty quickly, and then we'll come back for any questions. So I separated it into buyer name and the address that the buyer is ultimately going to be buying. Okay, so when you first meet somebody, obviously you know their name, but you don't quite know their address yet. Then I separated into action, yes or no, date, and notes. So what I meant, the idea there was, what is the action that needs to take place? I'm trying to keep this as super simple as possible. Did I do it? Yes or no? What date did I do it? And is there any notes that I need to be aware of, either that I create just to make sure I keep everything straight, or that my contract to close person or my VA or whatever, or assistant, puts in there for me. So what I did is everything that is in bold is something that I believe is the real estate agent's administrative team's job. And everything in not bold is the real estate agent's job. And I know that everyone on this call is a solo agent. I get that, but understand that there are going to be times throughout your day where you are working for a couple $100 an hour, and there are going to be times during your day where you're working for $10 to $15 an hour. And the faster you can get clear on which is which and capitalize your business enough to allow somebody else to do that type of work, then you will have more clients, more revenue, and a bigger business, and likely a better life by design. Okay, so the first thing is the first thing is buyer intake sheet and pre-qualify. Okay, next thing is, and this is not bolded, so this is your job, right? So by your workstation, you should have a buyer info sheet, or intake sheet and pre-qualification. So that's a list of some questions you might want to be asking a buyer if you find yourself in a conversation with one, right? So for example, you are making some calls, or you're checking in with a friend or whatever, and all of a sudden they start to sound like a buyer. Then you just grab your sheet of paper, because that's what we do. We look for buyers and we look for sellers, so we should be ready for that. And we have a list of questions that we ask them. Okay, we'll get to the exact questions a little bit later on this week, but if you can't resist, there is a document called the buyer intake sheet in the Google Drive right now that you can go cross-reference, okay? So buyer intake sheet and pre-qualify. Next thing I would send out is a thank you video or introduction, right? This is going to kind of set the stage for how your business is going to operate, and let them know right away that working with you is a bit different than working with your typical agent, right? So you send them a little video text or an email video or something like that. It was such a great pleasure to meet with you. I loved hearing the story about blah 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 blah. I'm excited to get you into that school district in Dunwoody that you mentioned. And I can't wait to spend more time with your family, something like that. Right? Yeah.
Why are you suggesting a video instead of a regular text?
Because the text is regular.
Okay. Like you just want to get their attention.
Well, I think that video is the future, right? And I think that especially at the beginning of the courtship, your job is to separate yourself from anyone else they might be speaking to. I'm not suggesting you can't get business by not, by.
No, I asked for a personal reason. I'll share with you later.
Okay, yeah. Sometimes you got to read your client. Sometimes you got to read the situation. Sometimes the video might be appropriate, or I'm trying to think of a situation where it might not be appropriate, but just make sure that your goal should be to constantly be separating yourself from the competition, the other agents.
Yep, got it. Okay.
Next is add buyer to the database with all tags. Okay. So that presupposes that you have a set of tags that you have found to be, kind of match the model of your business. There's a video of that in the email that I sent out yesterday, and with some suggested tags. And anytime you add somebody to the database, at that moment, you have the information as fresh as possible. Well, let's get them tagged appropriately. Okay, next thing is we're gonna have the buyer seminar or the buyer consultation. Okay, at the buyer consultation, as we know, we are asking all the questions we need to ask to determine their readiness, their willingness, and their whether they're able to purchase. We also want to give them a great overview of the marketplace so that they can have realistic expectations of how this is going to go. So for example, if the last time they bought was in 2012, when it was a very strong buyer's market, and now they want to buy and it's 2021 and it's the exact opposite, we need to let them know that they can't buy homes for 80% of sticker price anymore, and they won't probably get wood rot replaced, and they probably will have to pay their own closing costs and these kind of things. So we want to make sure that we share that data with them. Okay, then we're going to update the client database. The reason why we're going to do that is because we likely learned some more things, right? So we now take this new information that we have when we had spent more time with them and likely kind of got a little bit more emotional with them. And now we might know more about their motivation or their past or their future or their family or whatever. We create the opportunity in Command. I did this, you can do it if you want, but I always had a secondary backup within Google Drive. So the system that we used to use prior to Command was not really that mobile friendly, and so I duplicated all of my files, all of my information sheets and pending contracts and amendments and all that kind of stuff. I duplicated all of that in a Google Drive, which I could or Google Drive file that I could easily access. So I would put, now that I have a prospect, then I created a Google Drive file for them. Okay, upload the buyer checklist. The buyer checklist is what we're looking at. Okay, then I uploaded or edited the buyer info sheet. I'll just give you a quick peek at the info sheet. It's basically like a warehouse for all of the relevant data that you probably have to cross-reference, throughout the transaction. Okay, so property address, parcel ID, seller's name, seller's contact information, buyer's info, what are the, FMLS, Georgia MLS, list date, expiration date. Obviously, if you're not the listing agent, you might not know a couple of these things, but original list price, current list price, seller contact information. I don't know why I have that twice. Lockbox number, CBS code, that's for non-realtors to get into your lockbox, like a termite inspector or something. Purchase price, closing cost, earnest money, who's it held by, loan type and down payment, is there a home warranty and what's the amount, any notes, offer date, binding date, earnest money, deadline, due diligence ends on this day, financing contingency ends, appraisal contingency, home contingency, closing, possession, etc. So you're basically you're summarizing the terms of the contract. And if we were to write an amendment, for example, you have to cross-reference when the binding date was or when the offer date was, or if you are you want to make sure that you're keeping track of all the deadlines and that kind of stuff. Also, full information for the buyer's agent, the listing agent, the lender, and the closing attorney. Again, if there's common information that I've missed here, then feel free to add it. This is just a kind of an opportunity for you to summarize the transaction and to easily access that information, or have one of your partners easily access that information. Okay. Send buyer disclosures and pamphlets per the BBA, right? So the BBA says that we've shared with them documents like the, how to protect yourself in buying a home and buying a home in a flood, zone, or buying a distressed property or buying new construction, the ABCs of agency, all of those things. We want to go ahead and get that done. Then we want to send out the buyer brokerage and get that sent and signed. Most likely you would have handed it to them during your buyer consult. And if they didn't sign it right then and there, you can just send it to them electronically so that they can sign it that way. You're going to set up an auto search for them, right? They've told you probably, their budget and their the zip codes or school districts or price range or number of beds and baths, or whether the home has a pool, or whether it's in a swim and tennis community, or any of that kind of thing, what year it was built. So we set up an auto search for them. Okay, by the way, I highly recommend that if you're going to set up an auto search for somebody, that you duplicate yourself on any of the correspondence, right? So you don't want to send them, a home in the morning, and then they call you in the morning and say, oh my gosh, did you see the new home that came on the market? Can we go today? And you're like, huh, what home? Right? You should be like, oh my gosh, that's an amazing kitchen. I was about to call you, right? See what I'm saying? Preparation. You want to call the lender to introduce yourself, right? I would say, even if you've had a long-standing relationship with them, call Kathy and say, hey, Kathy, guess what? Steve is ready to buy a home. We're going to work together again. You excited? Anything I can do to help you on this? Anything I should know about Steve? See what I'm saying? So that's especially true if you are working with a lender that you're not familiar with. Okay. First day out. So let's go show some property, right? We're going to submit an offer. We've kind of glossed over this a little bit, but I'm going to encourage, especially if you have not written a lot of contracts, I'm going to encourage you to pre-write your contracts. Okay. Once you know what type of loan they're getting and these kind of things, you could pre-write a contract and come in later on and adjust the dates and the address and that kind of stuff. Okay. And that way, especially if you've never written a contract or you want somebody to review it, go ahead and write it, send it to us so we can give you some feedback on it. So when the pressure's on, you're ready. Make sense? Okay. So we've submitted the offer. We have a binding agreement date. Okay. Now, again, this is just what I did. Video congratulations. Oh my gosh, it was so much fun working with you guys. I'm so excited for you to have the home. I was hoping we'd find a home in a cul-de-sac, and I'm just so excited to help you guys, as we work our way through this transaction, right? Any questions you ever have, let me know, right? So send them that. Then I'm going to do some compliance checks. I'm going to make sure that everything is where it needs to be from a compliance standpoint. I'm going to confirm the updated file is in Docusign. So for example, like, it may not be in Docusign, the final version, because it may have been finally signed by the other party, or maybe it was hand signed perhaps, but get it all where it needs to be, right? I'm going to confirm the updated file in Google Drive as well. I'm going to share the paperwork with all the necessary people. That's the LO as the loan officer, the attorney, and the other agent. I'm going to create a custom buyer info sheet. So now really that should say update custom buyer sheet, because now you know a little bit more about the transaction, right? You know the address, you know the binding date, you know the closing costs, you know all that stuff, right? You are going to send a welcome letter I usually did that to my client, for the buyer. So, hey, congratulations, you've gone under contract. Here's a copy of all the fully executed contracts. Here's a list of all the deadlines that you need to be aware of. Believe me, they're on my calendar. They're on my assistant's calendar. Nothing's going to slip through the cracks. I just want to make sure that you have them too, right? I'm going to email the calendar of dates to the buyer, right? So you can make it, you could even do a Google Calendar, and they add the calendar and it goes onto their cell phone. Or you can send it. We used to do a little like drawing of a calendar basically and say, put this on your fridge, right? We're going to collect the earnest money, right? We are going to update the calendar with deadlines. So now we have a closing date, an appraisal contingency deadline, a listing, financing deadline, and a due diligence period deadline, and a earnest money deadline, and all that stuff. So we're going to get those dates on the calendar. Okay. We are going to call the buyer to summarize the next steps. It's very important. Okay. Remember, this is a very stressful experience for the buyer, most likely, and the way to alleviate stress is by giving them more information, right? So we always want them to know what to expect. So we're going to summarize the next steps. Okay, here's what the attorney is going to be working on. Here's what the lender is going to be working on. Here's what the HOA people are going to be working on. Here's what I need you to your help with. Here's what I'm doing, scheduling the inspection, all that kind of stuff, right? Confirm info on the community association disclosure. Now, I suspect I'm going to find some people that argue with me on this, and I don't really care. I think this is your job. Okay. It's the seller's job to provide the information. It's your job to confirm it. Okay. So don't just rely on whatever they put on the disclosure statement that says, you know, the fees are $200. Well, if they're $215, somebody's going to get mad. And you know who they're going to blame? Me, right? If they say there's no transfer fee, but then there ends up being a transfer fee, then yes, I know. Back when I was doing it, you know, each and every day, there was nothing in the disclosure statement that said that if it's not disclosed, the seller will pay. So that usually became a fight at the closing table. Okay, now it says the seller will pay, but that's kind of like akin to saying, well, if we get in an accident, it was their fault. Who cares? You're still in an accident. We got a problem here, right? I don't care whose fault it is. Just get it done. I don't want the problems to pop up. Does that make sense? Make sense? Because when problems pop up, they start to try to figure out whose fault it is. And by the way, it's never their fault. Make sense? Okay. Obtain HOA. And by the way, you call the HOA person and you say, hey, this is Bill Linkwald. I'm at Keller Williams. I have a buyer under contract to buy in your community. I just wanted to confirm a couple things with you if you have a moment. Right? That's how it happens. Right? And they're like, well, we can only talk to the seller, which every once in a while happens. Then I'll send a list of questions that I have the seller to ask, and I'll ask the listing agent to have the seller ask, and I'll get my questions answered somehow. Okay. I don't care if I have to walk in the building and ask for it myself. I'm going to get what I need to protect my client. Make sense? Remember, we're either making things happen or we're waiting for things to happen. They expect you're being hired to take initiative to solve all these problems. Make sense? It's okay to be assertive. Okay, we're going to obtain the HOA documents, right? These are the bylaws, rules, regulations, that kind of stuff. Home inspection, wood destroying, it's hilarious. Organism inspection. There are other wood destroying organisms outside of termites. There's like 4 or 5 different types of weird beetles and that kind of stuff. So we hire a termite company or a pest control company to come in and test for all that stuff. That stuff should be done during your due diligence period. Radon inspection. I believe that every home should have a radon test. I know radon is more commonly found around water. I know it's more commonly found around like rock, for example, like out near Stone Mountain and these kind of things. It is also typical, or up in the mountains. It is often found more often in homes with basements, right? However, I'm still going to get a radon inspection. Like if you're on the 20th floor of a bucket high rise, it's probably not necessary. But for all the others, I'm going to certainly put it in writing. Hey, I believe you should have a radon inspection on this home. Okay. Radon inspection is usually about $200-ish or so. Okay. Any other inspection? So if the inspection comes back and says, hey, we need a HVAC inspection, or hey, you need a structural engineer to come out here, or whatever. Other inspections that sometimes you see are septic inspections, well inspections, these kind of things. There is something called a buyer information sheet, might go by a slightly different name, but the attorney is generally going to send this out very shortly after they get the file, like the closing paperwork, or I should say the contract. And it's basically, they send one out to the seller, one out to the buyer, and basically say, hey, fill this thing out so we have a better idea of what's up with the buyer, right? Like, how are they taking title? What's their legal name? You know, do they want title insurance? These kind of questions. So make sure that the buyer completes that appropriately. I would call the lender to introduce myself. I know I said this earlier, but now you got more stuff to talk about, right? Now we got deadlines. Now we got to work as a team. So I just want to check back in. Okay. And by the way, just because I spoke to one lender, you know, at the very beginning of the process, it doesn't necessarily mandate that they use that lender. So now I want to make sure I'm in relationship with whoever they're using. Okay. I'm going to call the attorney and introduce myself. Hey, I'm Bill. I'm the buyer's agent. I'm here to help you. If you have any questions whatsoever, please let me know. This is the best way to reach me. If I can help in any way, please let me know. This is the best way to reach me. Okay. Everyone likes a great team member. Your job is to be a great team member. Make sense? I've said this 100 times, but the best realtor does most of the work. And I have a feeling you guys will be the best realtor. So just get comfortable with it. You're going to do all your job and most of somebody else's job. That's just how it works. Make sense? Okay. Where are we? Okay, we're going to negotiate repairs. So as a buyer, we're going to send off, assuming there's a due diligence period, which is probably a good assumption. We're going to send off an amendment to address concerns with the property with any requests that we have, and we'll negotiate that. Once that is complete, we're going to update the Google Drive because most likely there's an amendment of some sort now, and Docusign. Then we're going to order the appraisal. Now, I know this is a little tricky. I've kind of gone into the weeds about this in the past, but in a perfect world, and it's a little rare right now, but in a perfect world, we would resolve the inspection issues prior to you ordering the appraisal. The reason I say that is, let's say I'm the buyer's agent and Michael is the listing agent, and I just had an inspection and I send Michael a list of all the things that my buyer wants addressed. And then 10 minutes later, they get a call from the appraiser who says, hey, buyer just dropped an extra $450 into this transaction and they'd like to come and appraise this the home tomorrow morning. As a seller, I'd say, well, I guess they don't care so much about this, you know, backward electrical outlet because they just dropped another $500 into the transaction. You see what I'm saying? So I want to resolve the first round of issues before I give the seller the confidence that I'm still interested. Make sense? And I would say that strategy should be used 100% of the time, as long as you're not jeopardizing the appraisal deadline.
So I have a question, Bill.
Yeah.
Normally the appraisal is ordered by the lender. Is that a conversation I have with the lender in advance saying, hey,
Hell yeah.
can we get a few days before? Okay. Okay.
Say, don't you dare order that appraisal without talking to me. You clear?
Okay. Yes.
I know I'm being in your face, but we're in charge. Like, that can screw up the deal. That can cost your client a lot of money. You have to take charge, especially if you're dealing with a lender you've not dealt with before. I fired lenders because of that before. I said it very clearly, and they did it the wrong way. And we've not worked together since. I need A players on my team. You got to listen. I'm in charge. I mean, am I being a jerk? Okay. Okay. By the way, my client's not hiring me to like lay down and give the other side everything they want. My client's representing me or hiring me to represent them. Okay. Schedule closing. Oftentimes the first person that schedules closings gets the time and the day they want. So I was generally one of the first people to schedule the closing, or the first side, I should say, to schedule the closing, because I wanted the closing to be when I wanted it to be. Life by design. Make sense? I didn't want the closing to be at 10 o'clock in the morning because I was making calls at 10 o'clock in the morning. I didn't want the closing to be at 2 o'clock in the afternoon because that's when I was picking up my kid. You see what I'm saying? So I can either take initiative and get it done in a way that's convenient for me, or I can just let the world tell me when they want me to be somewhere. Y'all follow that? So guys, so many times I'm talking to real estate agents and we'll set an appointment and then they'll call me and say, hey, I can't meet at this time. I have to go show homes in Conyers. No, that is a decision that you chose to make. And actually, it's a little disrespectful, to be perfectly frank with you. You could have said, hey, I have a commitment at 2. Could I show you this home at 2:30? And you chose not to. So That's exactly why we need to be talking, so I can help you get more control over your time. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Man, I feel like I woke up on the wrong side of the bed today. Okay. Now we're going to schedule the closing. By the way, I do not recommend scheduling closings towards the end of the day on Friday, and I do not recommend scheduling closings at the beginning of the day on Monday. Okay. Okay. Check in with the lender. So the lender's been working, doing their thing. Now it's time to check in with the lender. Hey, how's everything going? Anything I can help you with? Got any concerns? Anything I need to talk to my buyer about? Need any paperwork from me? Right, you're checking in, making sure everything is going good. Okay, now we're going to look at the financing contingency, right? That's kind of the same call, right? Do you expect there to be any problems? You know, how long until we have a conditional approval? Do I need to be worried? The appraisal contingency. Hey, have we got the appraisal back? What's it look like, right? I think I've said this to many of you guys before, but when you get an appraisal and it is acceptable, meaning it is at list or at contract price or higher, you just call the listing agent and say, we're good. The appraisal is acceptable. That's it. You don't owe them the number, and you definitely don't owe them the report. Make sense? There's virtually no good that would come from sending a listing agent an appraisal for $320 when you're under contract to buy it for $300. It's none of their business. It's acceptable. That's all the information you need to give. Okay. Now, if the appraisal comes in low, you have to send them the report as justification for you asking for a price reduction. Okay. Okay. Next, we're going to check in with the steps and notes. So that could be things like, you know, buyer agrees or seller agrees to, you know, send all of the, you know, paperwork on the new stove, or, you know, any of the little stipulations that might have been agreed to, like a home warranty or something like that. You just want to take another look at this contract, make sure nothing's slipping through the cracks. Order home warranty. I always like to order the home warranty. So if I had in the contract a specific dollar amount that the seller was going to, the budget that the seller was going to pay, then I would send the buyer a, I usually did this with 210. I'd send them the 210 pamphlet. And then I had Kelly at one point write me up a little paragraph that said, here are my recommendations. I recommend that you get this policy with this add-on at this cost. And so I just have my assistant would send off the home warranty thing, and we had, you know, a template of exactly what Kelly said, and it says, hey, we were able to negotiate a $600 home warranty credit. Here is the pamphlet of my favorite home warranty company, along with the recommendation of my favorite rep from that company. If you have any questions, please call her and then tell me what you want to order. I don't know anything about warranties. I just know somebody who knows a lot of stuff about warranties. See what I'm saying? Okay. I will tell you, I will be vulnerable here. I think I came up with a great idea many years ago. Didn't do it a single time. Okay. But I think it's a great idea, and I'll share it with you. So what I thought to do was to say, oh, I'm sorry. And then we're going to confirm Google Drive and Docusign are updated. Right, in case there's just one more check, just make sure that everything is compliant. I had an idea where I would go and buy like a little welcome card or a little greeting card of some sort. And before closing, I knocked the doors of the new buyers' new neighbors, right? Say, hey, we got this family, the Smiths, they're going to be moving in, you know, right over there, you know, and I was hoping that you could sign this little card here welcoming them to the neighborhood. By the way, got any real estate questions? When was the last time your family thought about moving? Happen to know anyone from church or work that our team could help with a move in the future? By the way, while I'm here standing at your doorstep and I have proof of evidence of success here, when it comes to real estate, who is it that you trust? See what I'm saying? I didn't do it, but the idea is yours. Okay. I mean, isn't that kind of cool? You hand the buyer a card at closing that's like from, you know, 20 or 30 of their neighbors who are now likely in your database. And the buyer, I mean, how good do they feel? Right. And then some neighbor is going to walk over when they're moving in and say, oh my gosh, I met your realtor the other day. What a sharp guy. Like nobody's ever asked me to sign a welcome card for a neighbor. He's good, isn't he? Oh yeah, he's great. You see what I'm saying? All right, any questions so far? All right, check for clear to close. Clear to close is a lending term where essentially they have done all of their analysis and they have checked everything they need to check and they're ready to issue the loan. Okay, so you check into for a, you call the lender and say, hey, how we doing? We got a clear to close. When's the clear to close coming? Okay, I kept this in here. Georgia Natural Gas, I don't actually know if they still do this or not. They used to do something where if you registered your buyer for Georgia Natural Gas, like just put your buyer's information into the system and they got Georgia Natural Gas as their gas provider, then you would get a $25 gift card and they would get a $50 Visa gift card. Okay. I don't actually know if they still do that or not, but I'd always have Luth, my assistant, would always put their information in there. Okay. Closing gift. Remember, ideally by this time, you have found something about them, right? Do they like a particular restaurant? Do they you know, like a particular sports team? Do they like a particular type of wine? You know, something custom to what you've learned from, you know, hanging out with them for a couple months. Give them something that's unique. Don't give them a $25 Amazon gift card. That's just, there's no thought in that. You see what I'm saying? Give them something that's a little bit more personalized. Obviously attend the closing, take a photo at the closing. Okay. Update Google and command contact file, right? Because likely they have a new address now, right? So you want to make sure that that doesn't slip through the cracks. Okay. Input anniversary calls to the calendar. So for example, down here, I have call the buyer 1 week after closing, 1 month after closing, and 1 year after closing. So I put those dates in my calendar, or my assistant did. We posted the picture to social media. I wrote a handwritten note to the buyer, sending it to their new address. I wanted to be the very first thing. I wanted a message from me being the very first thing they received at their new home. Okay. I sent out some survey questions, right? What was your experience like? What was your favorite part? What could our team improve on? You know, do you happen to know anyone that we could help with, you know, in real estate right now? Blah, 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 right? You know, I always was kind of cognizant of the recruiting idea and opportunity as well. So I'd write a handwritten note to the co-op agent too. Such a pleasure working with you. You know, hope we get a chance to work again, work together soon. You know, I really love the way you handled the, you know, the repair at the last minute. That was super professional. Thank you so much, whatever, right? A written testimonial. I would request a written testimonial for my client, get a video testimonial too, which is even more powerful, I think. I'd update the upload the testimonials to my website and to Facebook and to LinkedIn. I'd move the file, the Google Drive file, to the closed file section, so it wouldn't clutter up my, you know, accessing everything quickly. So I'd kind of an active section and a closed section. I'd write a testimonial for the co-op agent as well, right? So that they can use it in their marketing or presentations. It's just, I'm just giving to everybody, right? Because I will come across that person again in the future and I want it to be pleasant. Hey, Michael, congratulations on a new listing in East Cobb. My buyer's going to be submitting an offer. What's it going to take to win? Oh, Bill, oh my gosh, I loved working with you 2 months ago on that townhome in Sandy Springs. Oh my gosh, man, just give me $450 and don't ask for a home warranty and you're the one. Thank you so much. Y'all see how this thing works? Okay. I would call the co-op agent and do a little script with them, which generally was like, hey, you want to grab coffee or something like that? So I can just learn more about their business and if there's any other way I can help them, etc. I'd add the co-op agent to my database, and then I'd have the coffee with the agent and I'd make the follow-up calls for the buyer. Make sense? Thoughts, questions? Is this there should never be another question of somebody saying, I got a seller now what, or I got a buyer now what. Here's 75 steps. Make sense? Now, knowing what to do and having, like, knowing that you're supposed to do this task and having the resources of the script or the whatever to do it is a little different. So don't be ashamed, don't be afraid to ask for how to do it, but you should clearly know what to do now. Is that right? Any thoughts, questions? Did I leave anything out? Did I add something that you don't think is necessary? Is this helpful, not helpful? Give me some feedback, please.
Bill, I really like this. This is very beneficial for me.
Cool, thank you.
I agree, it's very helpful. I can't wait to print it out so I can see it in person.
This is true. Same here, same here. It's a little small on the screen.
Awesome, awesome. All right, let me spend a couple minutes. Let me just show you one other thing. So remember I kind of colored some of these things a little bit differently. So everything that's this like peach color is the pre-contract. So that obviously ends at binding agreement, right? And then everything in this light kind of bluish gray is essentially the contract to close phase of the transaction. Okay, and then that ends with photo at closing. And then everything in this kind of greenish color, really light green color, is basically everything that happens after closing.
So everything is from beginning to the end.
That's the idea. Exactly. Exactly. Okay, let's there's a couple of variations on sellers. So I want to go through the seller list really quickly as well. And I just want to remind everyone that popped on a little late. Big announcement today at team meeting. Either be here in person and register if you can, or certainly at the very least, hop on via Zoom. Okay, Roswell, what is it? kwroswelltraining.com. Okay, seller process. Okay, so we have the same. Actually, need to insert a row above, and that should be name. I think we had that. Okay, so we have name and address. Then we have seller intake sheet and pre-qualify, same thing. Thank you, video. We're going to add to the database or update the client database with the appropriate tags. We're going to send the pre-listing package. Okay, right? Because when we're pre-qualifying, we're asking those questions, and then we're saying, and I will be sending you a package of information for your review prior to our appointment. Would you take a couple of minutes to review it, right? So now you're going to send it. By the way, it can be sent in a lot of different formats. It can be sent via email. It could be sent via courier. You could call up Uber and say, Uber shows up at your house and they say, all right, where are we going? It says, I ain't going anywhere, but this particular packet is going to this address. You cool with that? You see what I'm saying? You ain't got to be in the car. Y'all follow that? Okay. Then you go on the listing appointment. Then you update the client database, right? Because again, there's new information, right? You've learned some new stuff. We want to put it in a place where we can retrieve it. We create the opportunity. We search or research to share with the seller. So that might be things like, hey, I will send you a list of all the homes that have sold in this school district over the last 6 months so you can see the pictures, and we can huddle and talk about price, right? So you're basically sending the seller whatever data needs to be reviewed, right? You're creating the Google Drive for the client. You're sharing the disclosures with them, the seller's property disclosure, the community association disclosure, if there is one, the lead-based paint disclosure, if it's applicable, so that they can begin to complete them. Then you upload the seller checklist, this to Google Drive. You upload this sheet to Google Drive as well. You email Kern for the legal description. Okay, actually, I think it's somebody else that's handling that right now. I'll look into that. But if you were to email Kern, she'll send it to the appropriate person. The fastest way for you to get a legal description when you're sending off a request for it is give them the property address, give them the seller's name, and give them the county that the home is a part of or is in. Okay. We're going to upload we're going to send over the listing agreement to be signed if it's not already signed. We're going to upload, this is one thing that I used to do, right? Upload the Cole list to the Google Drive, because now I can go into Cole and call the 1,500 people that live closest to that property and let them know I have a new listing. Makes sense? hey, you happen to know anyone that wants to move into your area? I'm working with the Thompsons, and they're going to be they just put their home on the market, right? We're going to be having an open house on Sunday. If you want to come by and see the renovations they did in the bathroom, and please let me know if you have anyone that might want to stop by or have some questions about the house, or if you want to see it, if you're thinking about selling soon, just let me know, right? So the Cole list would be uploaded into the system. I'd review the disclosures with the seller. Again, I know that's a little controversial, but it's your job to make sure everything is as clean as possible. So if you get because remember, if they fill out a disclosure statement sloppy, what does that tell the buyer about the seller? They probably maintain their home sloppy, right? So I would get the disclosure back and say, hey, it looks like you forgot to check the, landscape lights that were going to be included. I assume those are going to be included, right? Okay, please check that. Hey, let's see, you forgot to check that the, what's like another random thing, like the switch plate covers or whatever are going to be included, right? So you want it to be nice and tight. You also want it to read appropriately, right? I'm not saying do something unethical, but if the seller describes a flooded basement by saying basement flooded in 1994, it doesn't flood anymore, it's not really that reassuring, right? So an alternative way of addressing that would be basement flooded in 1994. Professional and licensed contractors are immediately called to the home, right? Insurance was involved. Everything was repaired and replaced by licensed contractors. We tested for mold. No mold was found. Report is available if you're interested. And there have been no problems since, something of that nature, right? That's a bit more reassuring, right? Make sense? Okay, so be thorough, or I'm sorry, make certain that the seller is thorough. Okay, then we're going to add all the signed documents to Google Drive and Docusign. We're going to schedule the photographer. Especially nowadays, photographers are, it can be hard to get them out. There's, they're pretty overwhelmed. So schedule the photographer, edit the pictures, or obviously make sure they do. Complete the dual entry form. This is basically the document. There's a copy of it in the Google Drive. This is a document that you should have when you're walking through the home to note, okay, how many bedrooms are on each level, where are the attic steps, does the neighborhood have street lights, is the property fenced, right? Some of the stuff that like sometimes as you're just kind of walking around, you may not pick up on, like, is the washing machine or is the laundry room got a gas connection? Is the water gas? Is the, these kind of things. So you want to it prompts you all the questions that they'll be asking you to put into FMLS. It'll ask you those questions so you don't forget to look, like, oh my gosh, I forgot to look at the home has sidewalks. Right, yeah, makes sense.
Wait, where do you get that?
There's a copy of that in the Google Drive. It's called dual entry. So we're going to input the data into FMLS with pictures and docs, input the information into Georgia MLS with pictures and docs. We're going to email the FMLS printout, the data page, to the seller, right? Here's how your home will be looking on FMLS. Is this acceptable? And they're like, hey, you forgot to talk about the crown molding. Okay, put on the crown molding. See what I'm saying? You just want to make sure that they know that you're working and that it's done to a level that they're satisfied with because they're paying you a significant amount of money, right? We're going to update the super E key. So when somebody goes into your lockbox, you can see who it was and when they went and all that. We're going to update KWLS, which is about to be completely revamped. We're going to create a flyer and create a virtual tour. We're going to upload the video or whatever to YouTube or a blog or social media. Maybe we'll do a blog post about it. We'll do a little social media post around it. Maybe we can knock some doors. Hey, I'm Bill. It's my sign over there. The Smiths are moving to Utah. And, I made a commitment to them that I would help them find a buyer, obviously. And that's why I'm right here. Who do you know that wants to move into the neighborhood? And what you've told them is you make commitments and you follow through with commitments. That's the type of person that somebody wants to do business with, right? Okay, then I'm going to make the cold calls. I'm going to call all those neighbors and say, you know, same thing basically. I'm going to have a feedback system for showings. There used to be a time, guys, when like the home didn't sell in an hour. And so we would have to ask for feedback, right? Weekly calls to the seller. I used to call all my sellers on Friday afternoon. So if they didn't hear, if they had an active listing and they didn't hear from me on Friday, call the cops. Something's going on, because that's the standard. I call every seller on Friday. Make sense? So you should be asking yourself, what standards do I have? Or what standards do I need to have? Make sense? Okay, then we have binding agreement. Or I'm sorry, then we receive the offer and review with seller. Then we have binding agreement. So that's the end of the pre-contract phase. Okay, now we update the seller info sheet, right? Because now we have some buyer information and we know, you know, some of the contract dates and all that kind of stuff. We confirm that the updated file is in both Docusign and Google Drive. We share the paperwork. We email the deadlines to the buyer's agent. We email the calendar of dates to the seller. We change the status. We send a video congratulations. We update the calendar with all the deadlines. Now we call the seller to summarize the next steps, right? The home inspection will be on this day. This is what will happen, yada, yada, yada. You update the opportunity. Then you can make the phone calls again to Cole, say, hey, you remember Bill? This is me. I called you 3 days ago to let you know the home was available. It's already under contract. Wow, what a market out there. Any questions? Right. Then you complete the commission agreement. The commission agreement spells out the total commission and what you'll be sharing with the buyer's agent. You negotiate any type of repairs. You update the Google Drive and Docusign again, because now you probably have a new amendment. You make sure that the seller information sheet is completed from the attorney. You schedule the closing. You check up on the lender. Yes, it's okay to check up on the lender. I'm not asking what their social security number is. I'm not asking what their credit score is. I just want to know if it's going to close. Do you have any issues? Is there anything I can do to help you? Okay, makes sense? It's not a privacy issue. My seller is packing up their home. I just want to make sure that we can sell it to you guys. Make sense? I'm going to check in with the attorney and make sure they know how to reach me if they need anything. I'm going to watch the deadlines, right? The financing contingency, the appraisal contingency. I'm going to check in with the steps or notes to make sure that there's nothing I need to do. I'm going to complete all the repairs. I'm going to look for the clear to close. I'm going to do the closing gift, attend the closing, photo at closing, update command commissions and final paperwork, update my Google file because now they have a different address too. I'm going to update the opportunity, post pick, video congratulations, Cole calls because the home sold, right? Handwritten note to seller, thanking them for the opportunity, survey questions, handwritten note to the co-op, written testimonial, video testimonial, all the same stuff. And then I'll call the seller a week after and just say, hey, how's everything going? Just wanted to, thank you again for the opportunity to help you, that kind of thing. When you're dealing with buyers and sellers, guys, it's very difficult to over communicate. Okay, particularly with sellers. They need to know you're working. Okay, especially in this marketplace. It is very possible that I could go to Lorenda's house, get a listing agreement signed. My runner drops off the lockbox and the sign. There's not a lot of negotiation with repairs and amendments and appraisals and all that. And the next time the seller sees me is when I pick up a $20,000 check. And she's like, damn, that's a lot of money. You know why she's saying that's a lot of money? She don't think you earned it, right? And the fact of the matter is you probably did earn it and more, but you didn't tell the seller enough of what you were doing all day, right? Hey, just wanted to let you know we updated your listing in all the MLSs, and it should be completely updated in Zillow. Here's a link to it. Hey, just wanted to let you know I checked in with the attorney. Things are looking good on the HOA side. I checked in with the lender. Things are looking good on the loan side. Do you have any questions right now? Hey, just want to let you know I got my 3 quotes on that plumbing repair that you've agreed to, and here they are. Which one do you want me to organize? Can I organize one of these people to come over and do the repair? Right? It's you're telling them what you're doing. Make sense? Okay. Any other questions? Any other feedback, etc.?
Quick question. I noticed that when sellers and listing their home, they want to use a particular closing attorney, and then the buyer comes in and wants to use a different closing attorney. Is it normal for the buyer to be able to choose their own closing attorney? Or is it something that we can mandate in our offer, I mean, in our acceptance, that we have to use this closing attorney because, let's say, the title has already been pulled with that particular attorney?
Okay, so the few things I want to address there. Very rarely does the seller care that much. You used to see it a lot more in short sales and foreclosures, but in in regular markets, and new home construction, I should say. But in regular resale, the seller doesn't generally care. So generally, the buyer is going to make, is making the offer, so they're kind of making a suggestion. And when you said mandate, you want to make sure that would just become part of a counter offer, right? We want to use this attorney just like we want to pay this price. It's just another detail of the
Negotiation. Okay.
Yeah. In this particular market, I don't really think the attorney is near the top of the list of priorities for either party, quite frankly. And if I was on the buyer side and the seller made a stink about some attorney, I'd probably just let them have it as long as the fees were, reasonable.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, because ultimately there's going to be 4 or 5 things you really care about and about 100 things you don't really care so much about. So just fight on the things you care about and let some stuff go. It is in fact a negotiation, and negotiation implies that each party leaves the negotiation feeling good. Okay. All right, guys. Let's see. Very few of you have posted your numbers. Will you please post your numbers? Please, please, please. Don't make me beg. And I will see you today at team meeting. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.